This video is going to be on classifying angles, which should be a review from things that we've covered last year. An angle is made of two rays that have the same vertex. So let's talk about that vocabulary a little bit. A ray is an endpoint that has a line that comes off of that endpoint, and then an angle would be two rays that come off of the same vertex. So this would be an example of an angle. The angle would be on the inside, so this is the angle that we're referring to for this one. This point at the end is called the vertex. And each one of these two lines that make up the angle are called rays. We classify angles by the measure of each angle by itself. So one example of a classification of an angle is an acute angle, and an acute angle measures less than 90 degrees. If you think about the corner of a piece of paper or any perfect corner being 90 degrees, an acute angle is anything less than that. So an example of an acute angle, I'll draw over here on the side. Anything less than 90 degrees. So this would be an example of an acute angle. An obtuse angle is any angle that measures more than 90 degrees. So an example of an obtuse angle would be something that looks like this, where the angle itself is more than 90 degrees. Another classification of an angle that I already described earlier in the video is a right angle, and that's when an angle measures exactly 90 degrees. So that's when you can think about like the corner of a piece of paper, the corner of a ceiling tile, any of those are exactly 90 degrees. A lot of times when you see a right angle drawn, you're going to see this little square in the corner that signifies that it's exactly 90 degrees. Another classification is a straight angle, and if it's a straight angle, it's going to be a perfectly straight line, and it's going to measure exactly 180 degrees. Some other terms that we use to classify angles are supplementary and complementary angles. Complementary angles are two angles that when we put them together, they equal 90 degrees. An example of that is shown in the blue. We have two angles that are right next to each other, and let's say that this angle in red is 60 degrees, which means that this angle in green would have to be 30 degrees, because together they have to add up to exactly 90 degrees in order to be complementary. The example at the bottom are supplementary angles, and that would be two angles that together add up to 180 degrees. So if, for example, this green angle that we have is about 100 degrees, that would mean that this angle in red has to be 80, because together these two have to add up to 180 degrees to be supplementary angles. Sometimes students come up with little tricks to remember which is which. I've heard things like they remember that a complement should be, a small complement is kind of nice, so they remember that the complement is smaller, the 90 degrees is smaller than 180, or sometimes they think about supplementary. A supplement is kind of like a vitamin is a supplement, so they think about that being something that you add or more. So then they can use that to remember that the 180 degrees is supplementary. Here's some more practice with supplementary and complementary angles. The first example shows supplementary angles, and only one of the two angles is labeled. The angle is measuring 40 degrees, so we need to figure out what does this other angle equal. Well, because we know that supplementary angles have to equal 180 degrees, we can take 180 and subtract the angle that we're given in order to find the missing angle. So this missing angle would be 140 degrees. We do something similar to that with the example at the bottom, where we're now looking for a complementary angle that's missing. We're missing this angle here that goes with the angle that's already measuring 12 degrees. Because complementary angles add up to 90 degrees, we would take 90 and subtract 12 to come up with 78 degrees. So that would be the missing angle in this diagram.